I want to hit start the draft right now. That's going to put Anthony Knight on the clock. Yeah, so we're on the clock. Um, so Anthony, I think this is probably the easiest pick we're going to make all night. Personally, I think Cam Ward's the pick here. The Titans need a quarterback. Uh, you know, this just feels like it's always been the pick. It's always going to be the pick. Cam Ward.
Yeah, it's funny too because it's an unfortunate situation for the Titans because they have needs at wide receiver, Travis
Oh
Hunter,
yeah.
and edge, Abdul Carter. But
Mm-hmm.
then the quarterback position just trumps everything. I don't think Cam Ward's better than those two, but I do think if unless you have a quarterback, you're not going anywhere. Uh, Obviously, Will Levis just didn't work out, right? So
Yeah.
I think they reset here and they take Cam Ward, or we
Okay.
take Cam Ward.
Yes. So with the first pick in the NFL draft,
Bum, bum,
the
bum,
Tennessee
bum.
Titans select
Bum, bum, bum.
Cam Ward, quarterback out of the U.
Boo! No, I'm
The
kidding.
you.
All right, so now the Browns are on the clock. That's Josh and Taylor.
Yes. Taylor, you want to kick off the conversation in the war room?
Okay, so you and I, this was the only pick I think we actually talked about before.
Yes. Yep.
And we actually deferred on this because I think there are two players that, well, there's really three because the quarterback here, if you do think it's that dire and Shador is good enough to go in the first round, I think you do take him here.
Mm-hmm.
So we could have the Shador conversation right now, and then we could talk about the very Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, large.
Yeah, you know, for me, I think the quarterback position for the Browns is, honestly, probably their biggest need, right? I mean, it just, do we think, us being the Browns, right? Do we think that Shador Sanders can, is that person, right? Because when you're drafting this high, you want a true, genuine franchise type or you're hopeful that you get a franchise type player, right? And if you look at Shador, right, this is me as the Brown. This is not me as Josh, a Miami Dolphins fan. I am not a fan. I'm going to put it in an asterisk here, caveat of being the GM of the Browns.
This is all what we would do, by
right?
The way. This is not predictive,
right? So, as the Browns, I'm looking at Shador Sanders' stats, right? So he was. What did he have? 4,100 and something yards, 37 touchdowns. He can scramble, decent pocket awareness. So you can see the tools. I don't think he's a ready product. I don't think he's capable of leading a team right now, but that doesn't mean that he can't. But then you compare that to what I think is their second biggest need at edge. Abdul Carter, in my opinion, is a 10-year type edge producer in this draft. He is, in my opinion, I have him as my top player in this draft on my top 100 big board. So do you take the need with a slightly lesser player, or do you take the best player in the draft, from my opinion, at least, in Abdul Carter? And that's, for me, those are the choices for the Browns. I love Travis Hunter, but I just don't think you can justify a toolsy player who's a wide receiver / cornerback who's probably going to play cornerback in the league more so than wide receiver when you have a quarterback need and an edge need. That's just my take.
Yeah. So I agree with you to an extent about the Shador Sanders thing. Now, since last week, I went through a few players, especially at the top of the first round, see if my opinion has changed. Shador Sanders, it kind of has. He went from being that fringe first-round pick to somebody I do think is a first-round talent. I really do. I like a lot of what he can do. I like the accuracy. I like the decision-making. He really reminds me of, and this is going to sound a bit simplistic, but like, hey, do you like the way Tua Tagovailoa plays? Okay. Would you like to see that, but right-handed?
Yeah, and faster.
Yeah, he's faster, but also he's not going to be able to do a lot of the things that he has done in college at the NFL level with his mobility. So he'll be that Brock Purdy kind of mobility.
You're right.
But even saying all those good things, he's not a perfect prospect, and this team is not very good. No. And when I think you look at Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter, these are two blue chip prospects that I just cannot pass up.
Yeah, I mean, imagine Abdul Carter and Miles Garrett. I mean, together on a
Yeah.
like, excuse me, that's a cheat code.
But
you know what
see,
I mean?
that's the thing. That's going to be my argument for you here. Why would you? Because we extended Miles Garrett
Mm-hmm.
earlier this offseason. Somehow we, I guess, got him Stockholm syndromed, and he decided to stay here. So
That's funny.
would you rather get another edge rusher? And I don't want to say be redundant, but Miles Garrett's already going to make the other edge rusher better.
Right, but
No
I don't
matter who
think
it
you're
is.
being redundant. I think you're strengthening an already strong
Yeah.
position on your team, and you're basically turning what is a top a defensive line with the top edge rusher, in my opinion, in the
Even
league.
better. Yeah.
You're turning it into the best edge group in the league, hands down, with this pick. You know what I mean? That's just my take.
The quick argument I'll make, because I'm 100% willing to concede because I love both of these players.
Yeah, and I think we need to.
Travis Hunter, I think you could plug him in at wide receiver,
Mhm.
be perfectly fine. I know they do have some corners over there in Cleveland, but I do think he'll end up playing both positions. I really do, especially the fact that there's more huddling in the NFL as well. He probably won't have as many snaps at both, but he'll end up, I think, playing both. So I don't think that's necessarily an issue.
All right,
But
so
I agree.
who are we
Abdul
taking?
Carter.
Abdul Carter? All right, Abdul
All
Carter.
right. So with the second pick in the NFL draft, Cleveland Browns select Abdul Carter, edge rusher, out of Penn State. All right, so now the Giants are on the clock for us, Anthony. And for me, this is an interesting team to draft for. They brought in, this is another place where Shedeur Sanders could conceivably go. They brought in Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson to play quarterback for them this offseason. That doesn't take them out of the Shedeur Sanders sweepstakes, though, in my opinion.
I would tend to agree. I'm actually I think, as the New York Giants, we're quite shocked that the Browns passed on quarterback, and we're probably jumping up and down in the war room right now.
Yeah.
Because, we need a quarterback. We had a top 10 pick last year. We didn't pick. We went with Daniel Jones. That was, for all intents and purposes, a disaster. So now here we are in the top 10 again. I think we have to take the quarterback, despite having a litany of needs on this team. Pretty much every position on the roster needs talent. And Travis Hunter is difficult to pass on because he could potentially fill two gaps there in some capacity. I do think that I would lean towards taking Shedeur and shoring up the quarterback position, or at least trying to shore up the quarterback position.
Yeah, I think that's actually the pick here, Anthony. And I've gone on record in saying that I wouldn't draft Shedeur Sanders. In the 7th round, I wouldn't draft Shedeur Sanders. I don't like him as a person or as a prospect. That's just me. Now I do understand where Taylor was coming from, where there are parallels to be drawn between his game and Tua's game. I'm not knocking Shedeur Sanders for what he does on the field. It's more so between the years. I'm not a fan of him between the years. That being said, there is going to be a team that falls in love with him. He is going in the first round. In our first round mock a few weeks ago, he fell out of the first round, which was honestly criminal on all of our parts.
Yes, it was.
Well, something else to think about is that we have the quarterback whisperer Brian Daboll as our head coach. He turned Josh Allen around, so potentially whatever holes are in the Shedeur Sanders game, we're hoping that he can patch those up.
Yeah, and you know what? He's a Sanders, so the bright lights of New York are not going to be too big for him. I think this is the pick. So I think with the third pick in the NFL draft, the New York Giants are going to select Shedeur Sanders, quarterback out of Colorado.
Heck yeah.
Sweet deal.
I'm going to be honest with you, fellas. I know we, outside of this draft, right? We're all Dolphins fans, and I think we all are not big fans of Shedeur, but I think this is pretty damn realistic. I could really genuinely see these kind of conversations happening, and these are the players that kind of go,
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Shout out in the chat here, Hammer.
Oh,
Thanks for
hey.
catching us live, dude. I do not personally have a Twitter handle. I don't know about you guys, but we can throw them in the chat for you for whoever does.
I do not either. Well, I mean, I think I might, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I'd have to find mine too. But thank you for tuning in. Please like and subscribe. We are here every Wednesday.
Yeah, and Hammer, if you want to reach out to us for whatever reason, just to say hi or maybe have a conversation, you're more than welcome to comment on any of our videos or reach out to us on Facebook, which you can see the link or the our Facebook down at the bottom of the screen. Love to chat.
All right, so on the clock now is the hated New England Patriots, Josh and Taylor.
Yeah. So, all right, Taylor, I'm going to start with this. I'm thinking punter out of San Jose State. What are your thoughts?
You know what?
I hear
might
he
have
has
to
a hell of a
decline,
leg.
just because I would like not to get theoretically fired here.
No,
after
I know.
the
Okay.
round's over.
All bullshit aside, right? So as the Patriots, right, I think you and I pretty much align on the top, the three players that are in discussion here, right? And I think Travis Hunter is in the conversation. Is Will Campbell and Armand Membu, right?
Yeah.
They need help everywhere, right? Let's just be honest. Outside of quarterback, who I'm actually a big fan of Drake May. I think that Travis Hunter brings that star potential, kind of like Sauce Gardner did a couple years ago when he came out. He brings that swagger. He's the second best player in this draft, in my opinion, right? And I think with his versatility, it would allow the Patriots to do some really, really cool stuff, right? However, you have Drake May, who I think has the chance of being a top 12 quarterback in this league if he reaches his potential, right? And that's not a slight on him. That's a pretty damn good achievement, in my opinion. You have to protect him. Your offensive line is worse than hot garbage, right? And so I think for me, at least, and I'll let you take the floor or take the war room, take the mic. I think the conversation really is between Will Campbell and Armand Membu.
I disagree heavily here. I think they run to the podium. I think they sprint, they fall on their face because they're trying to get Travis Hunter here. I get they have Christian Gonzalez.
Convince me.
I get they have Christian Gonzalez. But you look at, for one, by the way, if Travis Hunter was gone, I agree 100%. Will Campbell, Membu, I might make the case for Genty. But right now, the way it fell, man, they need a wide receiver so badly. I know they also need an offensive lineman, but even with getting, they got Diggs, right? Stephon Diggs? I think they did.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
And that doesn't
even
mean
with Stephon Diggs there, I don't think it's the, world-changing addition to the roster. So I think what you get with Hunter is you get this physical wide receiver who's going to be able to get contested catches. He's going to be able to get there deep. He's going to be able to really be the number one guy.
Let me ask you a question about him. Do you think he's a better wide receiver or a better cornerback? And telling me he's great at both is not an answer, right?
If I had to choose a position for him to play, it'd be a wide receiver.
Really? Because I think he's a much better cornerback. So that's where my hesitation was. If you genuinely believe that
it's close. It is close.
Okay,
I'm not trying to sit on the fence.
I'm on board with that. If you feel really genuinely strongly, because I really don't. I like all three players. I think building the offensive line to give your quarterback time to actually play and maybe not get murdered is kind of the way to go here. But I'm totally okay with running the ticket up for Travis Hunter if you are.
Yeah. Plus, I think we could. I know we're not doing other rounds, but the Patriots could go in the second and third round.
They very well could. Yep.
All
okay.
right, so
Travis Hunter.
We have a consensus with the fourth pick in the NFL draft. The New England Patriots draft Travis Hunter, wide receiver cornerback out of Colorado. Two players from Colorado going in the top 5. I mean,
I never thought I'd see the day.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So it's on us, Anthony. Now the Jaguars are an interesting team to draft for. They already have their franchise quarterback, I put that in air quotes, in Trevor Lawrence. They need offensive line help. They need defensive line help. Where do you see them going here? Where do you think they should go here, Anthony?
Yeah, great question. The 3 players I actually had pinned for this position were Mason Graham and Armand Membo, and then Jalen Walker there at outside linebacker from Georgia. I think this is another team, of course, they're picking in the top 5. They have a ton of needs, right? I think you can't go wrong with any of these guys, but personally, I would lean towards Mason Graham here, the interior defensive lineman. I think we saw in free agency that teams are really starting, like the defensive tackle free agency was the wildest free agency I feel like I've ever seen. They all got paid. They all got picked up. There's literally, you can go look at the free agency list. There's no defensive tackles left, right? It's crazy. So it wouldn't surprise me if the Jaguars went and grabbed a stud defensive tackle out of Michigan, no less. I don't know. That's where the rumors were pointing. That's where my mind's pointing. I know they need offensive line help desperately as well. So where do you think they should go here?
I don't think there's actually much to talk about here because I agree. I think Mason Graham's the pick here. Jaguars defense last year was an absolute dumpster fire. You could do whatever you wanted against them last year, whether it be running the ball or throwing the ball against them. Bringing in a stalwart defensive tackle, I'm not going to say it's going to solve all their issues, but it's certainly going to, be a step in the right direction. So I think Mason Graham's the pick here, Anthony. I agree completely.
I do think that, it's going to be a hard, it's not going to be a hard conversation on draft day because they're all doing their work ahead of time. But let's imagine like Armand Membo and even Will Campbell have got to be big parts of that conversation as well. Because they have to keep Trevor Lawrence alive.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So Hammer comes in. You don't think they'll go edge? I would say they would go edge if Abdul Carter was available to them, but I have Mason Graham personally rated a little higher than Jalen Walker. I don't know how you feel about it, Anthony.
I think Jalen Walker is just climbing fast in terms of just what the media is saying about edge rushers at this point compared to right after the season when Jalen Walker wasn't really mentioned in the top 10 or even the first round for that matter. And now he's the top 10 everywhere I look. So these guys talk to NFL teams on a regular basis. So if there's smoke, there's fire. I think Jalen Walker is absolutely on the table for this pick as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't go edge for the Jaguars because they do have the other Josh Hines Allen over there. They have Trayvon Walker, a guy who they drafted first overall a few years back. Edge really isn't a weakness for them as far as I'm concerned, but defensive tackle is. So I think, Anthony, if you're good with it, we're going to go with Mason Graham here.
I agree. I think this is a tough call for your Jaguars front office, but yeah, I would go with Mason Graham.
Look, let's be honest. They're picking between like really good options here. So
they are.
Yeah, it's like we're splitting hairs, right? As you're excited. At least I'm not a Jacksonville Jaguars fan who I can imagine being excited as a Jacksonville Jaguars fan in any case. But the fact that you're choosing between Jalen Walker, Will Johnson, Mason Graham, like those are phenomenal cornerstones for your team.
Absolutely.
The splitting hairs are important in these conversations.
Yeah, of course.
Only like half of the top 10 picks work out each year. So you don't want to get one of those 5 who don't, right? So.
Just want to add too, Mason Graham, there was a lot of talk, especially on this podcast to hear about Mason Graham being like 290 at the combine. I do want to say at the pro day, I believe he weighed in at 306. So Josh, I think you were the one who was like, hey, he'll gain that weight back. I get what you're saying, and that's not good that he's at 290, but he'll get it back. It seems like he's getting back to
his playing weight was like 318 in college, I think, or something like that. And that's what he'll play it.
I think 310 is like his sweet spot. And I think Josh is right. He'll get back to that. So with the 5th pick in the 2025 NFL draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Mason Graham, defensive tackle.
He's one of my favorite players in this draft.
Taylor's NFL comp there is Christian Wilkins for Mason Graham, and I got to say that you'd be elated to take a Christian Wilkins there.
Absolutely.
So the Raiders are now on the clock. Josh, Taylor,
bring out the extinguishers. We're talking about a dumpster fire, ladies and gentlemen.
No, we have the dumpster fire in the next pick.
Well, it's one after the other. We are in the top of the draft after all. So,
Josh,
all right,
where do you want it? Because I'm not saying the Raiders are like. I know you guys said dumpster fire. There are good pieces on this team.
Yeah, of course.
But man, you got to start this because they can go in so many different ways.
Well, for me, honestly, it's I think running back is a key need, and the conversation can be had. Well, does it make sense? Right? Is this too high for a running back? How do you really feel about Genty? Do you believe he is the reincarnation of, I don't know, LaDainian Tomlinson or whatever? And if that's the case, it makes total sense to take a player of that caliber, which I personally think he is a very, very, very good running back. The Problem is they don't really have a great offensive line. So,
Mm.
you know, the argument can be made, okay, you lock him up for 5 years on a rookie deal, and then you fix the offensive line either post-draft with free agents that are left, or you play with what you have, you bolster it with what you can get, and then you fix it next season, right? So you Ashton Genty will then have a year in the system, hopefully the same coaches. For us, as we're looking at this through the lens of the Raiders, so hopefully we have the same GM, hopefully we have the same coaches and the same scheme. So he's got a year to pack on weight in a true NFL weight room with true NFL coaching. So I get it, right? They also have a need at cornerback. Those are my top two, right, for them, because there isn't a quarterback that I would choose here. I don't think Jackson Dart. I can see him maybe going to the Saints, for example. I don't know. Taylor, maybe you can convince me that Jackson Dart needs to go at 6, right? Maybe.
Unfortunately, I can't. And the reason why is because they traded that third for Geno and because of everything you already outlined.
Yeah.
I do think Genty is a very good possibility here. I do think wide receiver is a possibility here. Cornerback, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
And Armand Membo is still out there. And I know they got Colton Miller. I know they got DJ Glaze, I think is his name, at right tackle. But you could move Membo inside at guard. You got Jackson Powers Johnson as well at center. Then that way you're looking at what I think is a fantastic offensive line at that point.
Yeah. Yep.
So there's a lot of – that's what I was saying. There's so many different avenues I could see the Raiders going in.
Yeah, I think I talked myself out of Genty for them, and I think it's really down. I'm a huge fan of Membu. I think Membu is a like a 5-tool type Major League Baseball player. He can play across any of the positions outside of center and play them very well, and he's a freak athlete. But I also really am enamored with Will Johnson at the cornerback position, right? So I think for me, it's between Membu or Will Johnson. Now, Campbell, you can make a discussion. I think he's probably a better offensive tackle prospect, and based on what I'm reading, not for me per se, but I really do think it's between Membu and Johnson. What do you think?
I agree. Even though I did have Genty in our first round mock draft last week, I think for this exercise, the way it's went so far, in this scenario, I could see the Raiders taking Membu, getting a running back in the second round. It could be somebody like Trevion Henderson if he's still there, Quinton Junkins. There's options.
I'm good with Membu because I think that's pretty much, I don't want to say fixes their offensive line, but it puts them in a much favorable position.
All right, so you guys are decided? What's that, Anthony?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry, Keith. I was wondering if there's any interest in a wide receiver there for the Raiders.
Yeah, I mean, Matthew Golden or Tet McMillan, sure, but I just think it's too high for them, right? I mean, I think there's much better quality on the board still in Will Johnson, Membu, Campbell, Genty, even at that point. If you're going to take a skill position, take Genty, right? Because I think running back is a higher need than wide receiver for them. I like Matthew Golden coming out of Texas. I think he's a great spacer. He's fast. He's that X type receiver. Tet McMillan is that tall kind of, and I'm not comparing these two, but that, the Mike Evans type receiver, that possession receiver where he's not going to blow you away with his speed, but he's fast enough to create enough separation to use his athleticism and his height to get those 50-50s. I just think, and this is my own bias showing here, like Keith, I like the trenches, right? And I think you build through the trenches first. You see what the Dolphins are. We are all Dolphins fans. This is a Dolphins podcast. We're just having some draft fun. We see what it's like when you put Ferraris on the outside and you do nothing for the trenches, right? It's great when it works until teams catch on. And I think, taking somebody like Campbell or Membu or even Will Johnson at cornerback really solidifies you at a key position on the team for years to come. Because if you draft Membu or Campbell, both of them I can see being 10+ year players, in my opinion.
Now, Hamber, to your question right here with quarterback, I think Taylor and Josh are having a much different discussion if Shedeur Sanders is on the board.
Oh, if he's on the board, I'm running to the podium. If I'm
even with Geno, and Geno's a good quarterback, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
But still, Geno's not I would say, young quarterback. And plus, at that point, you get Shedeur Sanders in the room with Tom Brady, who is the minority owner over there. There's a lot to like about that fit.
And all it takes is one guy to fall in love with Jackson Dart, I just don't think. I think this is too high for him. So
Yeah. I can't tell you on draft. Now, we're not drafting for them, I don't think. I'm trying to do math here really quick. The Saints are apparently enamored with Dart. And I've seen quite a lot of mock drafts. So who knows? He might be going in the top 10, maybe not. Who the heck knows? But anyways, we are not talking about that. We're talking about the Raiders.
With the 6th pick in the 2025 NFL draft, the Las Vegas Raiders, I almost said Oakland, the Las Vegas Raiders select Armand Membu, offensive tackle, probably more of a guard, out of Missouri. All right, so now on the clock is the New York Football Jets. Anthony, I think we're in consensus here. We're going that punter out of San Diego State that Josh mentioned, right?
Oh yeah, put him on the board. There we go.
Yeah,
Done.
Trading the 7th overall pick for a bag of peanuts to the Dolphins. Right?
Is there actually a punter who plays at San Diego State coming out in the draft? Because we're doing a lot of buzz for him right now. It should be a first-round pick. Patriots and Jets.
Tamer says it's a good exercise. I think what you guys are doing is a lot better than a mock draft machine who doesn't know it. Yeah, I agree. I think this is and it's also a heck of a lot of fun, Hammer. I don't know how much. I hope it's a lot of fun for you guys to listen to, but we are having a blast right here.
I mean, genuinely, this might be one of my favorite shows so far the off season. Like I'm having such a good time, and prepping for the show was so much fun.
Yeah. All right, so Anthony, what do you think here, man? A lot of different directions we can go in.
You know, I'm super bummed that Armin Membo gets taken right there at 6. You're obviously thinking to yourself like they need skill position players. Hopefully they take one. You're all but have the Membo card filled out and ready to hand in already, and then boom, that happens, and you're like, God dang it! And we gotta recover here. I gotta say, I do think Tyler Warren is more realistic of a selection here than anybody is talking about. I think the Jets need weapons, and what better weapon at the top of the draft here than Tyler Warren? I mean, you're picking number 7. Yes, you could take a guy like Will Campbell, or maybe even take a bit of a project. I know that, Taylor has talked about Jalen Walker perhaps being a bit of a project because he's played multiple different positions. Or you take the best tight end prospect we've seen that many people compared to Rob Gronkowski and Tyler Warren. I think they'd have to have some serious conversations there about that.
Yeah, I think Tyler Warren is definitely in play here. That they lost. I will say this: cornerback is also a need for them. They lost DJ Reed in free agency.
Yep.
And they still have Sauce Gardner, but I think Sauce Gardner has regressed a little bit. He's not the player he was 2 years ago. He's not the player that everybody expected him to be. So I think when it comes to the Jets, Jalen Walker could be in play. I don't think Ashton Genty's in play. I think offensive tackle isn't as big of a need for them after drafting Olu Fashanu in the first round last year. So I think they're going to pass on tackle. I think for me, it's between Jalen Walker, Tyler Warren, and Will Johnson. I don't know how you feel about it.
Yeah, I see Will Campbell sliding into guard there. I think his arm length has been a real hot topic of conversation across what the heck was that event we just had, the combine, and then the owners meetings and stuff like that. So I do think that Will Campbell's certainly an option here. It depends on what they're thinking here for Justin Fields. Justin Fields and Cole Kmet had a really good dynamic in Chicago.
Yeah.
And then he had a good dynamic with Freiermuth last year before Russell Wilson, for whatever reason, took over that job, which made no sense. I think that they'll play it safe and take Campbell here. I personally would take Warren, but I think they take Campbell.
Okay. Well, let's see. I will defer to you on this one. So Will Campbell, Bobby Boucher. There you go. I like it. The 31-year-old linebacker out of South Central Louisiana State University.
And just to clarify again, you guys can definitely take Campbell, but this is also what you would do. So if you want to keep it a little predictive there, completely good. I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, I've been sticking to a predictive model here.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're acting as GMs,
fine.
we should probably act as the Jets might,
Yeah, what fits for their team, which I think Campbell does fit.
I think that's a great pick for them.
All right, so Will Campbell with the 7th pick in the 2025 NFL draft. the New York football stinking Jets draft Will Campbell, offensive tackle out of CU. That puts the Carolina Panthers on the clock for you boys.
Taylor, you're up, buddy. Kick
All
us
right,
off.
So here's my conundrum here. Here's my question to you. Who do you like more? Do you like T-Mac or Matthew Golden?
For them,
Yes.
who are their other wide receivers? Do you know off the top of your head?
Adam Thielen, Xavier Leggett.
Okay, so nobody got it. I would say, I mean, it's hard because Matthew Golden's that speed guy, and that translates to the NFL, but he's not all that tall. And I don't know. I think I'm leaning more towards Tet for us, the Carolina Panthers, over slightly over Golden, but it's a coin flip. But I don't know. Go ahead. Sorry.
I do have Golden rated higher than T-Mac
Yeah.
as of right now, but it
So do
also
I.
is.
Yeah.
That's just on an overall,
Mhm.
what I think about the player. Well, who fits for Carolina? I think that was a great point by you. Somebody for Bryce Young to just throw it up to, let him go
Right.
get it in that Drake London kind of role.
Yeah.
I do like that fit, man. As much as I like Matthew Golden, he really reminds me. I'm not saying he's going to be as good, but he kind of reminds me a bit of CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah,
in
me
the
too.
way he plays.
Yeah, I just think he's like a. I don't want to say this because he could turn out to be CeeDee Lamb 2.0, but I think he's the poor man's. He's the Dollar General. Not that there's a problem with Dollar General, but he's the DG CeeDee Lamb, right? And I think for me, when I was looking at this team, or when I was looking at our team as the Carolina Panthers, it was really between if Will Johnson was on the board. I knew
Will Johnson's possible.
I had a gut feeling that Tet would be on the board. We would have our pick at top wide receivers. Will Johnson still being there for us. I don't know. I think Will Johnson is kind of a cornerstone type cornerback, no pun intended. So for me, it's really between Johnson and Tet. And honestly, it's a coin flip. So I'm good. If you feel strongly about one of those players, I'm good drafting either one.
What position group you like more in the second? Wide receiver or corner?
I think wide receiver is much deeper than cornerback, in my opinion. I think cornerback is quasi top heavy, right? So you have Will Johnson, you have Jahdae Barron, you have the guy out of what the hell is his name? He's out of the smaller
Javon
school.
Revel.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Revel, right? And after that, it kind of dips off, but you have studs. I mean, not studs. Sorry, I'm overplaying my hand. You have very good wide receivers, and even into the third round, that I think you could snag to answer, right? Not wide receivers as good, or at least with a higher ceiling than Matthew Golden or Tet. But I think the cornerback market is much more top heavy than the wide receiver market. Just my take.
Now, I will say, I agree with you. I think Will Johnson's the pick here. I have him very high up on my draft board as well. But between T-Mac and also I was going to throw out, if Mason Graham was still here.
Oh, if Mason Graham was still here, that would have been my pick for sure.
Kenneth Grant as well. That's something that I think is a interesting possibility, but man, that cornerback room needs help.
I mean, are there any edges, Keith? I don't know where it says all. Is that like the position groups?
Yes.
Can you click edge? I just want to see who's there. So Mikael Williams, I mean, Mike Green might be a good option here. I know he's got off the field issues, but that man is, from an athletic standpoint and a on the field standpoint, he is a specimen. Now he seems to have some problems off the field, so might be why he's sliding. Mikael Williams, Shamar. I'm a huge fan of Texas A&M. Shamar Stewart.
Jalen Walker here as well.
Well, they need an edge.
This is a tough team.
Jalen Walker, in my opinion, is a true outside linebacker that can play situational edge, right? That can rush situationally. I just don't. For this team, I think it really comes down to Will Johnson, Tet, or one of the edges, right?
Yeah, I say Will Johnson.
Okay,
I think he's one of the safer picks.
That was my top pick.
All right, so with the 8th pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Carolina Panthers select Will
Tyler
Johnson.
I thought you were about to click on Tyler Warren. I was like, no.
Will Johnson, cornerback out of Michigan. All right.
Oh, and guys, just before you pick, just so you know, if you accidentally click on something, it looks like you can undo the pick, which is cool.
Okay, that's pretty sweet. All right. So Anthony, now we're up at the Saints. The Saints, they're a tough team to project. What do you see as needs for them? Because I see needs all across the board for them.
Yeah, I have a lot listed here. Corner, offensive line, wide receiver, defensive line, and quarterback. Looks like the Derek Carr era might be coming to an end after this season.
Yeah.
So they have a lot of holes to fill.
Yeah. Now they started out really well last year. They they blew, who was it? They blew the Cowboys out. They blew another team out, and I think the Panthers in week 1. And then they just went into a free fall. They fired Dennis Allen. Now they have Kellen Moore as their head coach. So I see Ashton Genty up there. I don't know that they go. I don't know if they go with Ashton Genty. I think that Alvin Kamara is still down there. Jalen Walker's a possibility. Tyler Warren, I don't know if they go tight end here. I think if I'm Kellen Moore, I'm building from the trenches. So for me, Calvin Banks would be my pick for the New Orleans Saints, just because I've seen what Kellen Moore can do with elite offensive lines. When Kellen Moore has elite offensive lines, his offense is cooked. You saw that in Dallas. You saw that in Philadelphia. So what do you think about that, Anthony?
Yeah, I think that's a great pick. I think Kelvin Banks Jr. is somebody we've talked about on the show an absolute ton. A guy that could potentially play tackle or slide in to guard. So I think that would be an amazing pick. I do think it's worth mentioning that, one guy out there linked Jackson Dart to the Saints here at 9. So now that's been making a buzz around NFL draft circles that maybe the Saints are looking at Jackson Dart here. I think that would be a mistake personally. I don't think, it would be great for the Dolphins. That pushes some players that we could have down, which I know is what Hammer's looking for there.
Yeah.
But
I will say this though. I don't mean to interrupt you, but Dart fits this scheme pretty damn well. That's it. Sorry.
Sure, but I would almost say that we try to trade back up into the first. We're going to have a high second round pick. Maybe we can trade up towards the end of the first round, depending on what the Steelers do at 21. 20 maybe too high to trade back to. But I think they're probably better off getting the trenches done first. They have Derek Carr this season, so I don't know that you need to draft your quarterback of the future in a draft where the quarterbacks aren't that good. So I would definitely lean towards the trenches here. And if we're looking at who's available, Kelvin Banks Jr. obviously pops out. The edge rushers here are very raw. Michael Williams, Shamar Stewart, we talked about. Mike Green before has off the field issues. So even Jalen Walker might be good if they want to try him out at edge. Safest bet is Kelvin Banks Jr., but we've taken a lot of offensive linemen in this top 10.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'll play out that way, but it seems to be where we keep leaning for these picks.
And again, Hammer, the dream would be for 3 quarterbacks to go in the top 10 here. As Dolphins fans, we would be doing a silent cheer. Well, not a silent cheer, an audible cheer on our live draft show. 3 quarterbacks go in the top 10. We are happy campers. I just don't know that I can go Jackson Dart with the Saints. Now you're saying he has pinpoint accuracy, like the one time you actually hit the bullseye at the bar. Yeah, I don't know that I can go Jackson Dart here, man. If I'm the Saints, I'm liking the trenches. Anthony, if you're cool with it, I'm going to go with Calvin Banks Jr. here.
Well, one more thing I just wanted to mention. I did have Tet McMillan here on my list of potentials when I was prepping for the show. I do think that, they brought Brandon Cooks back. They have Chris Olave, who after his rookie season has been somewhat of a disappointment. And then they have Rashid Shaheed, who is just a home run hitter.
Yeah.
So I definitely think if they decide they want to build around their skill position players, I could see this as a potential Tet landing spot. For today, I say we go with Kelvin Banks Jr.
Okay. Kelvin Banks Jr. So with the 9th pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, New Orleans Saints select Kelvin Banks Jr., offensive tackle out of Texas. On the clock is the Chicago Bears. Josh and Taylor, take it away.
Well, okay.
Can we sprint to the podium?
Well, Yes and no. Let's before we sprint, let's have a conversation because I think both of us like Ashton Genty here, right?
Okay, I thought you were gonna have like no Josh Simmons here. So
No, no, but I would say for them, I don't know. Josh Simmons could be an option. Kenneth Grant is another serious
Yeah.
contender in my opinion here. I know they need offensive line. They need to protect their quarterback, right? And I think I did not look at who they signed in free agency across the offensive line. I know they made some moves.
they got the Rams guard last year who got a big deal. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, and they got Joe Thuney from the Chiefs.
So, I mean, do you think that this is a position where we need to continue to address the offensive line to give Caleb Williams as much protection as possible? Or an argument could be made, Ashton Genty, who's not known as a blocker, could do that as well. Do you think there's a discussion to be had about an edge here? Is all I'm asking.
I have seen some mocks from some channels I follow put Mike Green here, and I love that fit from on the field perspective.
Me too.
But man, the way this broke,
some teams some team is going to overlook Mike Green's off the field issues and draft a stud.
His draft process too has been stellar, like across the board. Like this guy, the Senior Bowl, the combine process, all that stuff has just been like, oh, this guy's an athletic freak.
Yeah.
So somebody, like you said, in the first round will end up taking him. And it's possible that somebody takes him high, like the Bears, for example. But Ashton Genty's sitting here. For me, Josh Simmons is an interesting name. I think Kenneth Grant is an interesting name. But
now, Josh Simmons for you.
Swift.
Now let's talk about Simmons real quick.
Yeah,
he's listed as a tackle. I think he's a guard. Personally,
okay, I think he's a tackle, but
I think he's a guard, like a nasty guard. A guard that plays angry. They need IOL, right? They need, in my opinion, they need running back. They need tackle. Maybe not tackle. They need interior, and they need edge. Were my kind of big takeaways. So if you want to sprint to get Ashton Genty here, I think that's totally acceptable, right? However, I would say it's not as clean cut as we all want it to be, right? Because Kenneth Grant is there, Shamar Stewart's there, Mike Green is there. So of these players who are still here, who do you genuinely think fits this roster?
I do see the potential of Simmons there. I'm not sure who they do have at left tackle, but right tackle, they got Darnell Wright, so you don't want anybody who would be on that side. Kenneth Grant, I think, would make a lot of sense there as well in the trenches.
Because that would be my name.
Yeah, one hell of a run stuffer and one hell of a high motor. But I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but DeAndre Swift, to me, was so disappointing last year.
He was.
For getting the contract he had. And that the young quarterback needs a running game to succeed.
Yeah. Do you think that there is an issue, though, like a personality issue, right? Because we all know Caleb Williams is, I don't want to use this word, but kind of a prima donna, right? He likes the attention on him. He likes to have the ball in his hands. You draft an Ashton Genty to be your primary option, in my opinion. You know what I mean? So is there a clash there? Is there a conversation? We are pretending we are we are running the Bears organization. Is that a concern?
To me, it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, and also from just a pure talent perspective, Genty, I believe, is my number 2 prospect overall. Okay. So getting him at 10, I think.
Yeah. All right. I'm good with it. Yeah. If you're that solid about it, and I couldn't talk you off to Mike Green or to Kenneth Grant, I'm good with it.
All right. So with the 10th pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, Chicago Bears select Ashton Genty,